Hello, everyone. I'm Loretta, and I currently live in a small annex attached to my in-laws' house, alongside my husband, Alex. While I stay in the annex, Alex lives in the main house with his parents. The annex, originally a simple project built by Alex's grandfather as a retreat, was not meant for long-term living, but I worked hard to make it a cozy, livable space. It's about the size of a standard room. Alex and I had lived in a regular apartment for the first 4 years of our marriage, but everything changed when his parents, who adore him, suddenly asked him to move back home. They expressed their longing for his presence with tears and heartfelt hugs, which tugged at Alex's heartstrings. Moved by their emotional plea, Alex made the decision to return to his parents' home, catching me off guard with the intensity of their bond. Alex and I met at work, where he started out as my subordinate. At the time, he still lived with his parents, and it seemed like his time with them had deepened their connection. Even after we got married and lived independently, I noticed that his attachment to his parents and the comfort of his childhood home lingered. His upbringing was one of pampering, where he was never asked to help with household chores, which explained his reluctance to share domestic responsibilities when we moved in together. When I suggested dividing household tasks equally, Alex hesitated and admitted he'd never really done them before. Every time I tried to get him involved, his initial enthusiasm would quickly fade, leaving me to do everything. "This isn't for me, Loretta," he'd say. "You're much better at it. You should just keep doing it." As both of us were working full-time, I was eager to split the chores, but over time, I found it less exhausting to handle everything myself rather than constantly try to get Alex to pitch in. Things shifted even more when I began working remotely. Alex was initially surprised to see me home all the time, but eventually, he got used to it, or at least I thought he had. The real turning point came when his parents made an unexpected visit to our apartment. They expressed a strong desire to live closer to him, which eventually led to our decision to move into their home. Throughout our relationship, Alex always preferred living near his parents. Whether it was choosing an apartment or a job, he prioritized being close to them, which often led to us relocating and even changing jobs. Since I worked remotely, the location wasn't an issue for me, but I quickly realized that Alex's choices often centered around his parents' needs. Once we moved into his parents' home, I naively believed things would get easier. When Alex's mother greeted me, she said, "Thank you for taking care of Alex all this time. From now on, I'll take good care of him. Loretta, you handle everything else." At first, I thought she was offering to relieve me of some duties, but I soon realized what she meant. Alex's mother took over all his personal care, cooking special meals for him, washing and ironing only his clothes, maintaining his shoes and belongings, and showering him with gifts. Meanwhile, I was left with all the household chores that didn't involve Alex, including cooking and cleaning for his parents and myself. Despite my full-time job, I suddenly found myself responsible for managing their entire household, along with maintaining the much larger family home. It became clear that Alex was now firmly back under his parents' wing, leaving me to juggle everything else on my own. This new arrangement left me feeling disheartened. While it seemed to bring joy to Alex and his parents, it offered no benefit to me. My responsibilities had only multiplied, and I found myself shouldering most of the burden. One day, as I was cleaning, my father-in-law approached me with a hesitant expression. "Loretta, I have a favor to ask," he began, looking apologetic. He explained that he needed financial help. When I asked for clarification, he admitted that it was difficult for him to ask Alex for money. "Alex has worked hard," he said, "and it just feels challenging to ask him for financial contributions." This added another layer of complexity to our already uneven dynamic. Alex and I had previously agreed to split our expenses when we lived in our apartment, but over time, during shopping trips, Alex would often persuade me to pay for everything, whether it was groceries, alcohol, or clothes. When I hesitated, he'd accuse me of being stingy, sulking like a child. Despite these financial tensions, I found some relief in the fact that Alex mostly left me alone to manage my own life. That small sense of peace, however, quickly disappeared once we moved into his parents' home. Unlike Alex, his mother actively disrupted my routine. She'd barge into my workspace unannounced, tug at my clothes, and insist that I stop working to focus on household chores. The constant interruptions made it impossible to concentrate on my remote job. Frustrated, I confided in Alex, half expecting him to take his mother's side. To my surprise, he listened and promised to speak with her about the disruptions. I hoped this would lead to a reasonable compromise. However, Alex's idea of a solution wasn't what I had expected. Instead of addressing the issue directly, he proposed that I move into the annex, a detached space on their property. It was clear that he saw this as a way to separate me from his mother, rather than integrating us all into one harmonious household. Somewhat jokingly, I asked Alex if I could demolish the annex and build something new in its place. To my astonishment, he casually replied, "Go ahead, demolish it if you want." His offhand comment revealed a level of indifference that stung, but it also opened up unexpected possibilities. Taking him at his word, I threw myself into remodeling the annex. I cleaned, repainted the walls, and made the space my own. As I worked, I noticed that Alex never came to check on the progress. It became obvious that he had no intention of joining me in the newly renovated annex. This realization hit hard within the family dynamic. I was the outsider. There were moments when I felt truly alone, especially when they would go out to dinner without me or when I had to work late and missed family meals. These outings, usually organized by Alex's mother, seemed deliberately planned to exclude me. I couldn't help but wonder if she was hoping I would eventually leave. Yet despite the emotional distance growing between us, Alex gave me complete freedom over the annex, and I embraced it. I poured myself into DIY projects, installing shelves, choosing furniture, and creating a space that reflected my tastes. Interestingly, after I moved out, neither Alex nor his parents ever visited. They must have known about the renovations, but they showed no interest in my efforts. This lack of involvement only reinforced the feeling that I was no longer a true part of their family. Living away from the main house gave me a surprising sense of liberation. Without Alex's mother constantly hovering over me, I began to appreciate my newfound independence. The annex, now secure with new locks and a sense of privacy, became my sanctuary. No one, not Alex, nor his parents, could enter without my permission. I started to see the separation as a blessing, giving me space to reflect on what I truly wanted. Still, I knew that my mother-in-law wasn't one to back down easily. It seemed she had sensed my growing detachment, and I could feel that she wasn't done with me yet. Reaching my breaking point with her relentless behavior, I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating my next move. While I settled into the renovated annex, my mother-in-law's desperation to drive me away became more obvious. It started with small, petty acts, leaving garbage in front of my door instead of at the collection site. Sometimes, she'd host barbecues in the garden, purposefully leaving me out while ensuring the tempting smell of grilled meat drifted toward me. Though these petty efforts were annoying, they couldn't shake my resolve. Then one day, she called me to the main house under the guise of offering leftover meat and potatoes. Sensing something deeper was at play, I decided to go along with it. Upon entering the living room, I found her there, alone, with a smug expression. Dramatically, she slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a divorce paper. Her true motive revealed. She expected me to resist, confident that if Alex were to be involved, he'd obediently comply. All that remained was my agreement, and the divorce would be finalized with a simple visit to the city court. Her voice dripped with satisfaction as she said, "Isn't it time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Alex to stay married anymore. You're just a freeloading, unemployed woman. Get out." Though shocked by her boldness, her certainty fueled my own excitement. Without hesitation, I grabbed the divorce paper, smiling broadly as I exclaimed, "I'm heading to the city court right now. Thank you so much." The look of disbelief on her face was priceless. She had expected resistance, not enthusiasm. After submitting the divorce papers, I quickly packed up my belongings, feeling it was necessary to inform her of the completed process. I returned to the main house. I told her the divorce was final and that she was free to do whatever she pleased with the annex I had renovated. She was visibly surprised by my positive attitude, but still, she couldn't hide her relief. On the day I moved out, Alex and his father, finally realizing I was serious, seemed concerned. "Are you really leaving? What will we do without you, Loretta?" they asked. I smiled, thanked them for the use of the cabin, and explained that there was no longer a reason to stay married. The chapter was over. Soon after, I moved into a luxury apartment I'd had my eye on for a while. Once settled, my mother-in-law called me unexpectedly. Her tone was awkward, starting off casually before she shifted to a more serious topic, money. Alex told me you were giving his father $5,000 a month. Is that true? She asked. I confirmed her suspicions and took the opportunity to clarify that, contrary to her earlier accusations, I wasn't unemployed. In fact, I had left my previous job to become the president of a new company pioneering remote work systems. The surprise in her voice was evident. She had assumed I had no career at all. I quickly set the record straight. Sensing her curiosity, she pressed further, asking if my new role had increased my income. I offhandedly mentioned that my earnings were around $3 million, a slight exaggeration to avoid explaining the nuances of my finances. That's when the conversation took a turn. With that much money, could you help us out? She asked. Your father-in-law was laid off, but he kept it hidden. We've been surviving with the $5,000 you've been giving us, and neither Alex nor I knew about his job loss. Her words shed light on an earlier conversation I'd had with my father-in-law. His reluctance to ask Alex for money wasn't out of pity, it was a well-played move to manipulate me into financial support. While cunning, this revelation gave me a clearer understanding of their true intentions. They had been relying on me financially, subtly extracting $5,000 a month under the guise of shared expenses. Looking back, I didn't mind too much at the time, as it gave me the peace and quiet I needed in the annex. But now that I was divorced, I realized there was nothing binding me to Alex or his family anymore. It was time to fully embrace my independence. When I pointed out the disconnect between us, my mother-in-law's voice became desperate as she pleaded. That's not true. You're still family to me and Alex. Please, come back to us. I declined without hesitation, fully aware of the risk of being exploited again. There was no advantage in returning to a relationship that had left me drained. Alex and I were essentially strangers now, and it felt absurd for them to claim me as family after they had been the ones to push me away in the first place. I'm really enjoying my life on my own now, I replied. It feels a lot like when I was married, except now, I actually get to spend my money on myself. Back then, I was giving away $5,000 every month without even thinking about it. I much prefer my life as it is now. With that, I firmly said goodbye and ended the call, puzzled by why they thought I would ever want to return. For my mother-in-law, it must have been a last-ditch attempt. The reality was that Alex's salary wasn't impressive, and he had a habit of shirking responsibilities, frequently saying, "I can't do it," and handing tasks off to others. This was true both in his personal life and at work, which kept him stuck as a regular employee without any salary increases. With his father laid off and his mother a full-time housewife, they could no longer manage the upkeep of their large home. Eventually, they were forced to sell it and move into the very cabin I had renovated. While the space had been perfect for one person, I could only imagine how cramped and uncomfortable it must have been for all three of them living there together. Since then, I haven't given them much thought. My life now is filled with freedom, peace, and independence, everything I had been missing before.